Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. Today we're doing a NFL mock draft, our second mock draft of this draft season. We're going to be doing the top 24 picks and possibly longer than that if we have time at the end. We appreciate you tuning in, leaving a like on the video if you're here, tuning in live. We appreciate it. I'm going to introduce my co-host now. All right. Joining me from Houston, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Wayne. How you doing, bro?
For those of you who acknowledge Happy Leap Day, Happy Leap Year, it's once every 4 years, of course, that we get this extra day in February, and it gives us an extra opportunity to talk about football, which we do a lot here. And so today we're going to be doing our second, technically, mock draft, but it's actually kind of our first venture deep into the NFL draft. As on Dithole a couple weeks back, I think sometime either in early February or January, we did a top 10 mock, but it was just an initial exploration into this NFL draft. And so today we're getting all the way down to, I think, the 24th pick, which sits at your Dallas Cowboys. But if we have time, we'll go a little deeper. The rules are I will be doing even picks, and we will be doing the odd picks. You are allowed to propose trades. We'll see how that goes. We've never done really that before, so we'll see how that goes if that comes up. We each have to make one wild card pick, which I'll allow Emmy to explain what that means.
So a wild card pick is basically it could be a guy that you have your eye on that is projected maybe a little further than down, like in terms of a general opinion type of sense. Say that player might be a projected second round pick or a projected, late super late first round pick. So we're going to have one wild card pick where a team is going to reach on a player or something usually happens in the actual mock draft of that nature where a team just has someone so much higher on their board than everybody else. So it just completely throws off, the vibe of the draft because different players are off the board. So we're going to have two of those wild card picks. We hope you enjoy that part of it. I think it could add a little extra element. But let's get into this thing.
Absolutely. You're up first.
Okay, yeah. Pretty simple here, man. Going with Caleb Williams, I think there's a little bit of draft fatigue with Caleb Williams. Just simple as that. I think people just got tired of, seeing his name everywhere and just his all the commercials and all that type of stuff. And I think also the fact that USC didn't quite live up to expectations this year of, competing for a national title. I feel like kind of in terms of just general perception of him from like fans in general, they don't see Caleb Williams maybe as a winner in that type of light. But if you watched him play, he was doing everything he could, man. There's not really anything this guy can't do on the field as a quarterback. He knows how to read coverages, and people knock on him for not playing in structure, but I think that can be tamed in a little bit. Like Patrick Mahomes came in the league kind of as a gunslinger, and over time he's matured as a quarterback, and I think it'll be the same way for Caleb Williams.
Williams led FBS in touchdowns with 120 and wow plays over the last 3 years, but he also led the country.
Oh my God.
Take a little bit better care of the football, but that's not a major concern. He's drawn comparisons around the league anywhere from Patrick Mahomes to Aaron Rodgers to Kyler Murray. He's such a unique player. His football awareness, above all, is, I think, what makes him generational. His ability to play out of structure. In my opinion, it's the obvious first-round pick for Chicago, especially if you are unsure about Justin Fields. Even if you think you might keep Justin Fields, then I think probably makes the process of getting to this a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
But you can't pass up Caleb Williams, I don't think. Just with his talent. Like, it doesn't grow on trees every single year. We saw, what was it, 2 years ago, the quarterback class that wasn't very talented.
Yeah,
Um,
2021
the
class.
Kenny
Yeah.
Pickett class.
Mhm.
Some people were higher on Malik Willis than others, but how has that panned out, right? I think with this quarterback class, especially with a guy like Caleb, I don't think you can pass that up. All right, enough of that. I think the next pick is fairly easy as well. I think there's a general consensus around this. But again, this isn't a predictive mock. This is what we would do. But this is still what I would do. If I were Washington, I would go get the next in the pipeline of quarterbacks from the University of North Carolina in Drake May. Love his arm strength, love his pacing. He's put basically the full inventory of throws on tape. Show that he can operate comfortably with timing from within the pocket. The ability to make plays off script. Don't love his ball placement at times. And, working through his progressions, that's still a work in progress. But that's a work in progress for pretty much all quarterbacks. I think he could cut down on some of his reckless decisions, but I mean, you can nitpick that for just about everybody in this draft, as good as these quarterbacks are. I think he's cut from a similar cloth, at least from a physical standpoint, as like Justin Herbert with some of his physical gifts and I think his football IQ.
Yeah.
Love his size, 6'4", about 230. Is he going to throw at the combine? Does anyone know? I haven't heard, but if he is, I'll be really interested to see, especially at his pro day, how he looks.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, man. There's not really much to add there. So let's just move on to the next pick. The New England Patriots are on the clock at number 3. And this is where people are considering, this is where the draft starts, according to many. And I tend to agree with that sentiment. I think personally for the Patriots, I don't know if I would stick and pick here. I think obviously you don't want to go into next year with Mac Jones. That goes without saying. But I just don't know if this roster is ready enough to give a young quarterback the proper support. And obviously, some of those dominoes will fall in free agency, and we'll have a better idea of the roster that they'll have going into the season. But if this is what I would do, I would consider trading down, or 2, draft Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think that second option is going to be what I'm going to do here. I think I'm not just going to throw around the word generational, but as good of a wide receiver prospect as we've seen in a long time. We've had a discussion on the show, like, where is Marvin Harrison Jr. in terms of wide receiver prospects we've seen in the last decade? And he's right up there with the likes of Julio Jones and, names of that nature who, go in the top 5 of drafts. And I mean, I just don't see a scenario where he doesn't go to the NFL and deliver.
When you're in a situation like New England is, unless you can get incredible value trading down, which you might be able to, but I mean, these things are so up in the air sometimes. I think with where this roster's at and the turnover that's occurred on the coaching staff, the uncertainty around your quarterback, you gotta get talent on this roster. And I totally agree with you. I don't think you're ready to just come in and plug in a Jaden Daniels onto this very subpar roster, to put it kindly.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult to discuss Marvin Harrison Jr. without kind of sounding hyperbolic. I mean, you mentioned it. Like, you don't want to throw around the word generational just to throw it around, but he does grade well above average in pretty much every single area. And he's just a unique talent. We don't get this kind of player, even at the wide receiver position, every year. So I think it's an excellent pick. You just got to start to build the talent on this roster back to a level where you can eventually either bring in a quarterback in free agency, and who knows, maybe this quarterback question is answered before the draft starts. Maybe New England goes out and gets a veteran to come in and maybe compete with Mac Jones. I don't know what's going to happen, but you're definitely in a tough situation here, unless an offer that you absolutely can't turn down is brought to your attention. I think this is the easy solution here, is just pick the best football player on the board. In my opinion, after the two quarterbacks go off, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. I think the gap between him and this next guy that I'm going to pick for the Arizona Cardinals isn't as big as some people might think. For the Arizona Cardinals, they're sticking with Kyler Murray. They're not drafting a quarterback. He's going to be healthy next year, presumably. Where did this roster, at least from the offensive standpoint, really lack last year? I think outside of James Conner, who was solid at the running back position, stayed healthy for most of the season, and outside of their young tight end, which I love, Trey McBride, who had a monstrous rookie year. Outside of like Hollywood Brown, who struggled to stay healthy, they didn't have a lot of playmaking at the wide receiver position. And the wide receiver position is a very high value in today's NFL. And so I think you go get the next best thing at the wide receiver position in this spot. You get Malik Neighbors, who's a explosive playmaker. He had an FBS best 34 catches of 20 or more yards in 2023. He's just super, super smooth, gliding, speed, consistently wins on slot fades, one-on-one vertical routes. Also can be used on like jet sweeps, things of that nature. I've actually, since I'm big into recruiting at the college level, I went back and watched some of his high school tape. And I mean, those highlights are just legendary. He can win underneath. He can win up top. His finishing skills and route discipline are unbelievable. I don't think there's a super wide gap between him and Harrison, which is why I think if you're Arizona, go get yourselves a playmaker. Give Kyler Murray a go-to target. And that's what Malik Neighbors is.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of just like going and getting it at the catch point, just LSU was running, fades in the red zone, just spamming those over and over again to this guy, and he always delivered for them. I just think he just has a knack to find the football. And some of those throws, like, they're not, perfectly, in the spot where only he can get it. Some of them, like, he just goes and gets it. And that's the type of receiver you want in the first round of a draft, to just like raise the margin of error for Kyler Murray.
Yep.
So here at number 5, we have the Chargers on the clock. Just brought in Jim Harbaugh, and here's what we know about Jim Harbaugh. He is a old school type of coach who values winning at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
And I've seen a lot of, Brock Bowers mock to the Chargers, which I would be completely fine with personally. But I think for the Chargers, I would either trade down to maybe number 8, 9 and grab like a defensive end or a D tackle in Byron Murphy possibly, and really bolster that defensive line, or take Joe Alt, and really solidify that offensive line. Because if you get that right tackle position right, if you think about it, they already have Rashawn Slater, they already have Zion Johnson, a different first round pick from 2 years ago, I believe. If they bring in Joe Alt to play right tackle, you have a 3-man core group on your offensive line that's going to be around for possibly 10 plus years to protect Justin Herbert. And I think that is something that for me is hard to turn down if you're the Chargers. So I'm going to go with Joe Alt, put him in at right tackle. And to me, he's the most technically sound tackle in this entire draft. To go along with it, the physical tools are there, and they're like, I wouldn't call him like freakish in terms of like length and all those types of things, but he's well above average in just about every, athletic trait. And to go along with his, just IQ of the position and just ability to execute.
Yeah. I agree with that. Okay. Gotta protect Justin Herbert. Okay. So with New York, with the way that the board has fallen here, they're in an interesting spot here at 6. If you wanted to, you could go quarterback here. That's not what I'm gonna do. I think I'm between getting another playmaker, whether that be a Rome Odunze possibly, whether it be maybe even a Brock Bowers at this point, as I think is one of the best football players left on the board right now. Or you can address the offensive line, which has obviously been a big issue. Olu Fashanu's on the board. Talies Fuaga is on the board, although I think this could be a little too early for him. I don't know, man. When I look at the Giants, I look at their roster and I just think they need just playmakers. They need some dynamite to their team offensively. And for me, I mean, if it's Brock Bowers or Rome Odunze, you could go either way here, in my opinion, because I think Brock Bowers can play outside. I mean, I think he's just at the tight end position. I would go as far as to say he is kind of a once in every 5-10 years kind of guy. I won't go as far as to say generational, but he is. Now, there are injury concerns there. So it's him or Rome Odunze for me at this pick, but I'm going to go Brock Bowers because I just believe that he is, as I said, just a guy you throw the ball, is going to catch the ball, and he's going to make plays for you as long as he's healthy. Comes from a great winning program, which I love in the NFL draft. I don't know if you can pass him up. I mean, it's him or Rome Odunze. You could also, if you want to address the offensive line, do that. But you can also do that later on. So I don't know. It's something different. Not necessarily a wild card pick by any stretch of the imagination, but that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with that pick, I think.
No.
Their weapons, I think, needed a boost, and that definitely fits the bill. Okay, now the Titans on the clock. The Titans feel pretty dead set in terms of going tackle. It looks like based on PFF's projection that the Bears or the Seahawks would be interested in this pick, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna stick and pick here, and I think I would just take best tackle available. And for me, I think it's a new era with Brian Callahan, and I think you have a choice of a guy who is a dominant run blocker and someone who's a great in pass protection and has superior physical tools in Olu Fashanu. Like, this is a guy who last summer you could have told any draft analyst that he would go like number 2 overall, and no one would have batted an eye. Like, he was a Penei Sewell level prospect. He had a few rough games in there this year, which dropped him to number 2 or 3 tackle to most eyes. But I think I'm going to go Olu Fashanu here.
Good pick. Look, in our last draft episode, I think our last mock draft, I raved about him as I watched his tape, and his just body control, and ability to just mirror pass rushers. His pass protection is unbelievable. 0 sacks on 733 pass blocking snaps over 29 career college games. In the Big Ten, that's ridiculous because we know how many good defensive lines there are in the Big Ten. Good explosive pass rushers on the outside. And he also flashes power and mobility in the run game. He can get overextended and struggles sometimes to sustain at the point of attack, but and I think he's much better balance-wise going in reverse and pass protection than moving forward, but that's something you can work on. I think that's something that you can coach. I think he's a starting left tackle with Pro Bowl upside at the NFL level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, with the Falcons here, they've got needs. But look, I think with their new head coach, we've brought in Raheem Morris, right? We got Zach Robinson as our offensive coordinator from the Los Angeles Rams, as he was the pass game coordinator with Sean McVay. So he comes from the Sean McVay tree. With this new coaching staff, I think they go new quarterback at this spot, and I would too. If I were the Falcons, I'd go get Jayden Daniels. Your roster is a little bit more solidified to a point where I think you can plug and play Jayden Daniels. His ability to create explosive plays is well known. 90 plays of 20 or more yards accounted for in 2023. That's just ridiculous. And I could just stop there and people would kind of understand. But, I think as a passer, he's got balanced feet. He's got a rapid release. He can layer throws to all 3 levels. I think he does some of his best work throwing those slot fades, posts, those kind of throws. But he's got poise. He's got athletic instincts. He can buy time, obviously. Really explosive. Can create off platform. Now, I want to see how his body holds up at the next level. He needs to learn how to, I guess, preserve he's kind of a leaner kid, but that's a question for pretty much every quarterback that plays his style. I think, it's not meant to be an apples to apples comparison, but Daniels, I think, would force opposing defenses to kind of defend this Falcons offense if you plug and play him right away, kind of like teams defend the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, which just gives you another level of playmaking and dynamism, if that's a word, on your offense, which you need in today's NFL if you want to go win at the highest level in the playoffs. So Jayden Daniels is the pick at 8. I think you could definitely see him go at this spot.
Yeah, definitely.
What he's going to do.
I like that fit. Obviously, it depends on whether the Falcons end up with Justin Fields or someone else. But I think if Jayden Daniels falls to them, I think that would be a best case scenario out of those 3 quarterbacks. So I can't fault the pick in any way. Okay. Now the Bears on the clock at number 9. I think at this spot, I'm tempted to take Rome Odunze. I would either go with Odunze or go defensive line um, with Byron Murphy. I think him rising up the board and going in the top 10 is a real possibility. But pairing Rome Odunze with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore on the other side is just too enticing to me. I just think that pairing could be one of the best in football. I really believe that.
Yeah, Odunze is, I mean, we saw it at Washington. That speaks for itself. But his body control at the catch point is, I think, his biggest strength. Took major strides with his ability to play through contact and win 50-50 balls throughout his career at Washington. Obviously, at times was the best player on the field in many games this year for Washington, a team that made the national championship, as we know. Just field fast, fluid route running, above average tracking and adjustment skills. And you look at his ability to create explosive plays down the field, 32 catches of 20 plus yards in 2023. Whether it's him and Justin Fields or him and Caleb Williams, whoever that quarterback is, I think it's he'll work well with pretty much any and every quarterback just because of his ability to high point footballs and catch them. And some of Justin Fields' best work as a passer has come on the deep ball. So if they were to keep Justin Fields, that could work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a really popular pick. In other mock drafts that I've seen, this spot for Rome Odunze has obviously been very popular. So I like it. For the Jets, you can obviously go tackle here. You could go wide receiver, but now that Odunze is off the board, you probably wait a little bit to do that. I think the easy pick here is Fuaga. Or you could maybe, you could even go best player available, which might even at this point be Byron Murphy, in my opinion. But I think I will go Fuaga. They have to improve the offensive line. We've been saying it for years. There are questions all over the place, but I think it's a need for them. And Fuaga, I really like him. I haven't watched all that much of his tape yet, but he's probably the top run blocking lineman in the draft. And I like how that fits into this Jets offense. Quick into contact, creates immediate displacement at the line of scrimmage. Functional athleticism, technique for the edges. I think he's going to be a really good player, whether he moves inside to guard for a while and then moves back outside to tackle. Where he slots will be interesting, especially early on, but you can use him in, I think, a variety of ways or positions. And I think he makes your team better, your offensive line better, which is important with an older, not necessarily mobile quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. So you go the next best thing on the board. You could go J.C. Latham as well, but I think I like Fuaga a little better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I did think about the Jets going receiver as well, but with the top three guys off the board, it just wouldn't make sense at this spot. So going with tackle, and a tackle who I think if he struggles by chance, I think he's a guy who year one, year two, maybe as he develops, could even slide inside the guard and give you really good production there. Okay, now the Vikings at number 12. This is where I have Byron Murphy going. I love the fit there to have him in Brian Flores' defense. He's someone who, obviously, Brian Flores sends a lot of blitzes, but tactically, Flores is someone who doesn't just send, eight guys on blitzes just randomly. He's someone who sends blitzes so that he can create one-on-one matchups. And I think Byron Murphy, if you put him on your defensive line on the inside and you get him one-on-ones, he's going to be able to win. He's someone who just gets into the backfield on demand, seemingly, and just any type of attacking front four defense that just wants guys who are going to penetrate and create havoc in the backfield. That's where Byron Murphy would be best fit in terms of going there. So I went with Byron Murphy at this spot. I think it's just a perfect fit.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll talk more about Byron Murphy on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports later tonight, but just his explosiveness is what stands out to me. Obviously, you could talk all day about how he tested today at the Combine. Ran a 4.87 official 40 time. Just explosive. He gets knocked for his size, playing closer to 6 foot. He's not a big guy, kind of undersized at that 3 technique position. But, I mean, at close to 300 pounds, his explosiveness and just his athleticism is unreal. I think the more and more I think about it, not even just from a Texas fan standpoint, just from a football watching standpoint, I think he's probably at this point going to be, I'd put him number 1 on my board for defensive tackles right now, especially considering that Johnny Newton is coming off a foot surgery. And I think he is probably the best player. And his draft stock is rising about as fast as any player on this board right now.
Yeah. And because in this draft, he's going first defensive player off the board. I wouldn't even rule that out.
Yeah.
Actually happening as well. I could see him going at 9 to the Bears even.
Yeah. And I think, because those top guys, obviously there's not much room to drive up your draft stock. You're already at the top. There's room to grow as a player, but in terms of where teams view you being selected, like that's as high as you can go. And I think for Murphy, a guy who maybe 4 months ago maybe would have been projected as kind of like a day 2-ish guy, that has risen, and it's risen really, really fast to the point where I'm starting to believe there's a better chance he becomes a top 10 pick than there is that he slips down to, say, 20 or past that. I don't know. That's just my feeling on it at this point. Okay, so where are we at? We're at
number 12 with the Denver Broncos.
Okay, here you could go quarterback here. I'm not going to do that, though. For me, I'm between Terrion Arnold and Cooper DeJean. Those are the 2 best, I guess, defensive backs on the board, on my board at least right now. Look, DeJean, you can natural anticipation and cover. I'm not picking him, so don't click anything yet.
Yeah.
Rarely out of position, athletic gifts, top tier ball skills. Only allowed 1 catch of 15 plus yards this past year. Just an incredible player. You could go him and his versatility. Obviously won the Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year award, and is also incredible. Always good in the return game. Or you could go Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, who some people are saying is kind of like a carbon copy of the Bears' Jalen Johnson at corner, who's going to get a bag this offseason, whether it's with the Bears or another team. Just, an incredible player. It was probably their best corner at Alabama. Comes from the SEC. I think he posted an SEC best 17 passes defended and 5 interceptions in 2023. This is a tough one for me. It's kind of personal preference in what you prefer. But I'm going to go, I think, with Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. for the reasons I mentioned. I mean, you can use him on special teams, natural anticipation and coverage, rarely out of position, top tier ball skills, incredible in coverage, use him at multiple positions. Comes from a program in Iowa that specializes in defense and that just pushes out plenty of good solid NFL players on the defensive side of the football. So Cooper DeJean is my selection for the Denver Broncos. I think he's a really, really good football player. He makes their team better right away.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good spot for him. I'm not sure what Denver plans to do at defensive coordinator for next year. I think they're sticking with who they had last year, kind of a attacking blitzing defense. And Cooper DeJean is also a defensive back that you can send on blitzes and can get to the quarterback. He's just a chess piece. You can put him just about anywhere on defense and feel comfortable in what he's going to give you. Okay, now the Raiders at number 13. This is where I'm going to have my wild card pick. I'm going to go with Ennis Rakestraw from Missouri. Not really just making fun of the Raiders here or anything. I know they have a new regime, but in fairness, they are always a team that throws a wild ball out there every once in a while in terms of their draft pick. And personally, with the physical tools that Ennis Rakestraw has, you can't knock them for this pick, really. It's more so just he gets a little bit grabby at times, and will you be able to coach that out of it? And he has all the physical abilities. He has this, like, I think he's like 97th percentile in terms of, height and length as a cornerback. And he has the long speed to stick with receivers as well. And, just it's just going to be about consistency and just he had the tendency to just get over aggressive at times. So I think he has the mindset of a Raider. Let's just say that.
Can you put the mock back front and center?
Yep. I forgot to change it back. That's my bad.
Yeah, and the Raiders seem like the kind of team that, in the past at least, has kind of gone unconventional, let's just say that, in the draft. But, I mean, look, I'm not as familiar with Ennis Rakestraw. I haven't really watched a whole lot of him. But from what I do know, really good in press man coverage, balanced in his transitions, didn't make a whole lot of splash plays at Missouri, but just a really solid football player. Some teams I think have mentioned his medical history as a concern, but he's got NFL starter level talent. And if he stays healthy, he'll make that team better, as they needed help in the secondary for quite a while.
Yeah.
They need to get young on that defense. They have, but I mean, the more talent, the better. Okay, 14 with the Saints. This is an interesting position because I think you could go a lot of different directions. But for me, the Saints are an interesting team in the way that they draft, or they have at least been that way in past years. But they have drafted and developed really, really well. I mean, that's how they're able to sustain pretty competitive teams year in and year out.
Yeah.
I think the player I would take here is Jared Verse. I think you make an argument he's the best edge on the board. I've been a big advocate of Jared Verse from the very beginning, since he arrived at Florida State 2 years ago. He can win with speed. He can win with power, flashes violence with his hands, breaks down the rhythm of blockers, sets a physical edge in the run game, always around the football, fierce playing personality, guys that can give you all-out effort. This is a guy that out of high school had one scholarship offer to Albany. And now we're talking about him going potentially in the top 15 of an NFL draft. Just the way that he worked his ass off in college just shows that he has that work ethic. He has great character, and transferred to Florida State. 18 sacks in 25 games in Tallahassee speaks for itself.
Yeah, the numbers speak for themselves for sure, and the power that he shows in his it's just out of this world, man. There's no other way to put it. Just in terms of power rush versus speed rush and that debate, I'm not really here to get into all that, but if you want a power rusher, Jared Verse is your guy in this draft, 100%. Okay, number 15 with the Indianapolis Colts. I think it's best cornerback available, personally. And you could take your pick of the litter between Nate Wiggins, Quinyon Mitchell, and Terrion Arnold. But for me, out of those three guys, I value Terrion Arnold the most. What he did this past year at Alabama, every game you watch Alabama, he was making plays, man. Like he's just consistent in coverage, and the numbers back that up. Just if you ask anybody on that Alabama staff, they'll back that up. Just known to have an extremely good work ethic as well. I think for the Colts, they need cornerback help so badly, and I think Terrion Arnold is the perfect guy for it.
Yeah, as I said, I think you can kind of see like he has traits of Jalen Johnson. I love him. His numbers speak for themselves as well. Okay, Seattle's interesting. I've seen mocks where Byron Murphy falls to 16 and Seattle takes Byron Murphy, which I think would be an excellent fit. I think, but at this point, I don't know if that's going to happen, to be honest with you. I think if he makes it to 16, it's over. He's not going any further down. But in this scenario, obviously, he's off the board. You can go edge or you can go interior offensive line here. They need to get better on the interior of their offensive line. And they also need more pass rushers as they have in the past. It's hard for me. I think about a guy like potentially Jackson Powers Johnson in this spot. You could even maybe, I don't know if you can go Zach Frazier here. But I think I'm going to go edge rusher. And to me, you could go Troy Fautanu from Washington. I think that's actually might be what I do. The guard out of Washington. Look, he's from the Pacific Northwest. I think connections are there. Seattle just brought in Ryan Grubbs. They took him away from Alabama as he, first went with Kalen DeBoer down to Tuscaloosa. You need help at the guard position. You need help on the interior offensive line. If it were me, I would either go probably a center here or one of the better interior offensive linemen in the draft in some people's minds. And look, as part of a award-winning offensive line for the best offensive line in college football, who kind of got manhandled in the national championship game, but Michigan is playing with a bunch of men. They were playing with 22 and 23-year-olds who have been developed in that program for years and years. And that was just, they were a different level in terms of their physicality and their size up front. I think Fautanu would be a good pick here. Needs to become more disciplined with his technique, but I think that's something you can coach. Flashes violence with his hands, makes defenders feel it when he connects. I like his muscle twitch in his pass sets, and pulling and locating in the run game. Got good explosiveness, good body control. I think he's ready for NFL snaps right away. I think he has the length and the talent to potentially, I think he can play pretty much anywhere. He fits inside at guard, but I think you could even put him outside at tackle if you wanted to with his length, 6'4", 320. I've seen this pick here before. I've also seen centers. I've seen edge rushers, but I'm going with the guy with the connections to this coaching staff and I guess the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that pick. I'm got to be honest with you, but I think it's a good pick. I agree with it. I think PFF has him listed as a tackle, which I find interesting. I would have to look into that, but I think him at tackle or guard he has the position flexibility to be able to play either, and I think with the injuries that their right tackle suffered last year, there are some questions in that regard. So having a backup plan is definitely a good idea. Okay, so now the Jaguars at 17. It's pretty interesting. Two corners have really fallen. According to PFF, they have Nate Wiggins and Quinyon Mitchell in the top 12, and now here we are at 17, and I'm not going to take them. I think for this spot, I just think the Jaguars need to solidify that interior, that offensive line. That was a really glaring weakness last year, and Jackson Powers Johnson, I just don't think outside of maybe the top 10 picks in this draft, I think for one, centers have a really good hit rate in the draft. Like you could argue, like in terms of first round centers, there's just not a lot of misses in the last 10 years of history. And Jackson Powers Johnson, it's no different. I think he's a elite center prospect, has the ability to play guard as well. So I think it's a no brainer here.
Yeah, I like that pick. Love Jackson Powers Johnson. If he were to fall to 20, I would love that pick for Pittsburgh. Get another JPJ on our team. But also, we need a center. Bad. But yeah, I love it. Protect Trevor Lawrence, please. Okay. Obviously, it gets a little weird when you start making picks for your divisional rivals. And that's what I'm going to do here with the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, I mean, the season pretty much went down the drain once they lost Joe Burrow. I think you could go offensive line here. You can also go defensive line here. Get better on both sides of the ball. Let me look at my board real fast. I honestly can't believe that Dallas Turner has fallen all the way down to 18.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, what's the Bengals situation at edge rusher looking like right now? I know they have.
They drafted a kid out of Clemson last year, I believe. I think it was.
Yeah, Miles Murphy. I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's certainly enticing. Dallas Turner.
Yeah, that's hard to pass up. And then you have those two corners on the board as well. It's pretty interesting.
You do. I love Nate Wiggins. I love Quinyon Mitchell. I'm praying one of those two guys falls to 20.
I think Chidobe Awuzie for the Bengals, I think he's getting a little bit older. There's no question about that. So I think corner wouldn't be a bad pick here, I don't think.
Who?
Corner wouldn't be a bad option for the Bengals. It's not listed as a need by PFF, but To me,
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I think Nate Wiggins is something else. His speed stands out to me. Um, I think you probably go him in this spot. I would go him in this spot now that I think about it more. Um, really good player at Clemson with his athletic profile. I think he definitely um, translates to the next level. Just his ability to transition in and out of breaks, accelerate to top gear. Only allowed one catch of 20 or more yards last year on 41 targets. Um, his frame is kind of a concern. He'll need to improve in the run game as a defender, but shows tremendous effort. Um, and he actually had 2 chase down forced fumbles this past year and a saved touchdown in this past year at Clemson against Miami and North Carolina. Um, I'd love him for Pittsburgh. He just fits kind of that profile, kind of like a JPJ, just a longer corner. Um, Not big, but just physical corner, big, athletic, um, good in man coverage. I think he makes the Bengals better right away. So I would probably go Nate Wiggins, but you could go tackle, you could go uh, edge, you could go defensive line. I'm kind of concerned about a little bit concerned about Johnny Newton. I want to see how he tests at the combine. Did he even participate? He might not have today because of his injury. So I don't know what's going to happen necessarily with him, how far he may fall or where he potentially goes. But yeah, go Nate Wiggins.
all right. Yeah, I think that's the right move. I think the Bengals on defense, I think their numbers were very good, like over the scope of the entire year, though. I think early in the year there was definitely concerns at secondary positions. As the year went on, some of those problems were alleviated, but I think having a new blood in the building definitely would be ideal for them. For the Rams, I think it's pretty clear that they need secondary help. Um, I think Quinyon Mitchell would be a good pick here, definitely. But for me, I think I'm going to go edge here. I think Dallas Turner would be fantastic in this spot, pairing him with Colby Turner on the interior, and then of course Aaron Donald. Um, he's going to be able to have one-on-ones on the outside, and I think this team knows that at their peak they were a elite pass rushing football team, and I think they want to recreate that with a new young core. And I think Dallas Turner is a huge step in that direction.
Yeah, he's a freak. He ran, I think it was a 4.47 today in the linebacker slash defensive line portion of the combine. And I know 40 speed isn't a like that straight line speed isn't always a direct apples to apples thing with like playing field speed, especially from the edge position, but it just shows you his explosiveness at the very least. He's a very explosive athlete, and he's honestly one of my favorite players to watch in college football um, for the time that he was at Alabama. Um, I think he has room to add to his body. It's kind of like a physical specimen. But if you want to talk about freaks, um, plays physically at the point of attack, strong run defender, led the SEC in sacks last year. That speaks for itself. And so it won't be too surprising if he were to fall to 19 to see um, the Rams take him. Um, they need to get younger, obviously, in a lot of areas. I don't know exactly who they brought in to be their um, who's their defensive coordinator right now. I don't think it matters. because Dallas Turner's just that good. Okay.
I think it's Shula. I think they hired Don Shula's son. I can't remember his first name, but
Yeah, that's interesting.
pretty sure they hired. Yeah.
Um,
Now it's your Steelers, right?
So we're at 20, and this is how the board has fallen. I know a lot of people are probably interested to see what I'm going to do with this pick. A lot of good stuff on the board right now. There's Kool-Aid McKinstry. There's Kenyon Mitchell. Latu, the edge, although the Steelers don't need edge rushers. There's even a guy like Zach Frazier who would address a huge need for Pittsburgh. You could argue the biggest need of all, which is the center position. Now that Powers Johnson is off the board, I know Mike Tomlin in this front office has been eyeing that position, and they just cut Mason Cole. So that position, like, you have to get a center. And are you sure that a guy, if it's not JPJ, is going to fall to you at your next pick? Like, you can't be absolutely sure of that. So I'm tempted to pick. I'm tempted to go center, but at the same time, I think corner is also a huge need. You got to love some of the things we saw from JPJ last year. But with Patrick Peterson aging, he could be a cap casualty, I think, here in the near future. And just with some of the injuries that we sustained this year, the lack of depth at that position has been a problem for Pittsburgh, and it honestly shouldn't be. Mike Tomlin's a defensive coach, and I think I've fallen in love with, and I think he's going to fall in love with at the same time, kind of the physical tools of a guy like Kenyon Mitchell. So that's going to be my pick here for Pittsburgh. I think he screams Pittsburgh Steelers pick, just with what he's put on tape. So I'll go Kenyon Mitchell. Pair him with Joey Porter Jr. Yep, Joey Porter Jr. on the outside of the corner spot.
Yeah, I figured you would go with Mitchell there. I think with leaving him off the board with the Rams, I think I kind of threw you a lob off the backboard. You just couldn't help but dunk it. I think it was the right move for sure. Okay, now for the Dolphins. Something interesting I saw online was I've seen Jatavion Sanders go to the Dolphins at this spot, which
I have
is pretty interesting. But I think the Dolphins just need just line help on both sides. They just need to get more physical in general. Johnny Newton would certainly help with that. But let's see. I think tackle could be interesting at this spot. I think Teron Armstead, excuse me. His injury history, and also he's a free agent, I'm pretty sure. And I think J.C. Latham is the best tackle available. I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, he's good. There's a reason he was a starter at Alabama. Yeah. That's obviously speaks for itself, but also just a nasty player. Sometimes, he's a brick wall in pass protection. Wins in one-on-one situations, can win with speed, power, or against speed and against power rushers, has shown that ability in the SEC. The Athletic compares him to, or kind of makes the comparison of like a stronger version of last year's number 10 pick, Darnell Wright, who has more, with Latham having a little more athletic upside. So that's interesting. In the run game, he kind of overextends sometimes with his upper half, but you can probably coach that. That's something to do with technique and approach. I like that pick. For the Eagles, well, first of all, I have to ask you this question. You probably wouldn't consider that Fatanu pick at 16 a wild card pick, right? I still need to do my wild card pick, or are
Yeah,
we
yeah.
okay?
I mean, I'll leave that up to you. I don't mind calling that the wild card pick, but um,
Because I'm
I think
interested here with the way the board has fallen. Um, I mean, for the Eagles, let's think about their needs, right? What do they absolutely need? Um, you probably could use a linebacker. Um, you definitely could use help in your secondary. That's for sure. So
definitely
you could go corner. Now, who's the next corner on the board? Kool-Aid McKinstry potentially
potentially, yeah.
could be it here. But if I really want to kind of go wild card, because that's what we agreed to upon doing this mock draft. Um, what would be a wild card pick in this spot?
Maybe maybe a wide receiver. Um,
Yeah, potentially like um a Troy Franklin type. Would that be? I mean, who's Adonai Mitchell? Is he considered a
I would
wild?
consider Adonai Mitchell a wild card pick. Yeah, for sure. I think
Okay, let-
most see him as early second round. So
okay, fuck it then. Let's do that. Adonai Mitchell to the Eagles. Um, Despite some wasted movements sometimes in his routes, doesn't he's not a guy who potentially is going to. I mean, he has some ability, but he's not the catch and run after catch guy. He's more of a, um, I guess, accelerate, decelerate at will, fluid movement skills, create separation out of his breaks, and goes up and catches the football. Um, Not necessarily the strongest player, I guess, through contact is what I'm trying to say. But he has the hand-eye coordination. He's got the frame at 6'4", 192. Is what he's listed at. Can high point and reach throws. And you pair him with A.J. Brown and, uh, gosh, why am I having a brain?
Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith. I like it. Uh, I,
I
I
hate
can
it.
I consider that a wild card pick. I think I'm interested to see, and we'll talk about this more on Dit Hole, what Adonai Mitchell runs in the 40. Just because I think if he were to run, say, four sub 4.5 ish, I think he could potentially be a first round guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
but that's my biggest combine question for Mitchell. What I'm waiting to see from him, kind of that straight line speed, I think is what a lot of teams are waiting for. But I mean, everything else speaks for itself. Performs in big games too. Caught a touchdown pass in every single big game that he played in at the college level. 2 years at Georgia and then a year at Texas.
Yeah, I think he even has a bit of yak ability, kind of up his sleeve, more than what he showed at Texas. I think because if you look at the role he played, his average depth of target I think was over 16, which is absolutely insane. I think that's fifth in the country. So think about like out of 1,000 receivers or something like that, he's fifth in the country in terms of uh, air yards per catch. So he's running deep digs and those types of things. I think if you get him on slants and maybe some curl routes, I think he has the ability in there, but he just hasn't really shown that yet. The comp that I see a lot is kind of a bigger CD Lamb without the huge yak numbers, but So if he lives up to that comp, then you're looking at an absolute slam dunk pick for the Eagles, which, as a Cowboys fan, makes me want to puke. But it's okay.
All right. Who are the Texans going to go with here?
The Texans are gonna go with Leilatu Latu.
Okay.
Leilatu Latu. I think D'Amico Ryans will see this dude's understanding of pass rushing, just the art of pass rushing in general, and just be blown away. He's someone who has been quoted saying that he studies, Max Crosby, T.J. Watt, all those types of players, and I think he has the ability to be on the level of those guys. I really do. I think he's a extremely underrated player in this draft, and I could definitely see a team, take a chance on him, like maybe even top 15, if he's able to test better than some people are projecting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've come to the last pick of this particular mock. For your Dallas Cowboys, man, I want to make a good pick here. So, since I'm picking for your team, obviously, if you think about the Cowboys, what do they need? They need, um, you need help probably on the defensive line, right?
Yep, interior defensive line, linebacker,
interior defensive line, linebacker. What other spots could you go?
I would. Well, I would say running back, but not in the first
Not at this
round.
spot. Not at
Yeah.
this spot.
Let's see. I would also consider tackle. Tyron Smith is a free agent, and Tyler Smith seems like he's going to be a perennial All Pro at guard. So I would consider tackle also.
Okay. It's interesting. From what I know, I think Johnny Newton would probably be the pick here, just considering, got to get better in the run game, on that interior of the defensive line, beef that up. But, like some really, really damn good football players are available still.
Yeah.
And it's very tempting to look at like Kool-Aid McKinstry, even though I know that's not the biggest of needs, to look at a guy like even Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver from LSU. Amarius Mims is an interesting guy as well. Peyton Wilson, that guy ran a 4.4 in the 40 earlier today. He kind of be a wild card pick, kind of in my opinion. PFF has him at 27, so they're higher on him than I've seen almost everywhere else. But maybe after his performance today at the Combine, that will rise a little bit. I don't know how you would feel about something like that, but that's not what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to go Johnny Newton. What do you think about that pick?
I like it. I love it. I think Johnny Newton for a while was, consensus number one defensive tackle available.
Yeah.
And he was extremely productive at Illinois. And I think, going with defensive tackle in back-to-back years, I think is a kind of would be a death sentence to, Mazi Smith and how we view him. But Mazi Smith didn't really show us much last year, if we're being real. So I think Johnny Newton maybe being a little bit more of a pass rush threat along with the run stuffing ability, I think it's a slam dunk pick for sure.
Okay, so we got through 24 picks. We did not have any trades this draft, but we did have our wild card pick. So finish the draft, maybe simulate the rest. Can you do that?
Technically no, but here I'll just while you're talking, I'll just make random picks for.
Okay, so just make some random picks and let's finish this off. We'll post this on our social media. If not tonight, then sometime over the weekend at the very latest. But yeah, that was really fun. What'd you think of this kind of draft. What do you think of our first real dive past the top 10?
I enjoyed it. I always, struggle with when it comes to draft content. Um, like I love the draft and like I love doing these mock drafts like on my own, but in terms of like making it into a podcast, it's a little bit difficult just because you're just talking about like traits of players and just it kind of gets a little bit repetitive. But I think we did a good job of it this time. I think we're moving in the right direction with it for sure.
I think where we'll probably moving forward, at least for the next month, is we're going to get busier with all the other stuff that's going on, is we'll kind of move into doing some more individual team mock drafts
Yeah.
instead of like round by round mock drafts, if that makes sense. And so we were still planning some team episodes. I know for my Steelers and your Cowboys specifically, but potentially for other teams as well, we'll be doing some individual team mocks, whether that's here on our main channel or over on our Patreon. So be sure you check that out. Our Patreon's free right now, so you can check that out. Make sure you like and subscribe to our content. We're going to have Dit Hole here coming up soon. So if you like that, please tune in. We're going to talk about a little bit more detail Texas prospects, Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat. We'll talk about both those guys. We'll talk about Adonai Mitchell. We'll talk about Jonathan Brooks. We'll talk about Xavier Worthy. We'll talk about JT Sanders. The guys who are largely thought to be day one and day two guys, we'll talk about those guys. We'll talk about maybe some team fits. We'll talk about their projection at the next level. We'll talk about maybe some player comparisons. And then we've got other stuff to get into as well. So make sure you tune into Dit Hole. And then baseball previews will start up this next week. We're a week into spring training. And the first actual regular season game is going to take place, I believe, overseas March 20th. And that's going to take place between the Dodgers and the Padres, I believe. They're playing overseas. And that will be kind of like the first actual game of the regular season, but opening day won't be until March 28th. So we're getting closer, man. When the calendar turns March, I immediately think spring. I immediately think baseball, along with March Madness. So be on the lookout for that stuff too. Any parting shots?
My only parting shot was just F1 is back as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Tomorrow morning, we're going to have our first, qualifying session of the season. And as a Mercedes fan, seeing us in P1 and P2 in practice 2 was quite the sight and not what I was expecting at all. So I'm hyped.
We'll be talking some F1 this year as well. Okay. With all that being said, man, I just like the month of February here in less than 2 hours. We are going, gone. Peace.
Peace out.